Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form with second Chucktober Epilogue. So I guess this would be Chucktober Epilogue Part 2, the final chapter, Living with Chucky. So yeah, this will be the end of any Chucky coverage from my channel for now, up until whenever a new installment of the franchise or something comes out. So yesterday I talked about Doc of Chucky, which was a 5 hour documentary containing interviews with cast and crew, behind the scenes people who were involved in the Chucky films. And this one is a little bit different. I know that previously I had said that Living with Chucky, released in 2022, um, was more, had a bit more focus on the fandom of it, and it does, but that is more like toward the end, some of that screen time. But I should it's a little bit about family in the last portion of it. And I guess, if you see it once and then you see it again, you see that a bit more on the second watch. So this was directed and written by Kira Elise Gardner, who was the daughter of Tony Gardner, did the puppetry and stuff. You see him in Seed of Chucky, getting beheaded. Obviously, it's not actually him, it's like a fake head. But yeah, that's where the family aspect of this comes from. And it seems like the footage I was shot for this, or some of it anyway, some of the interview footage, was originally part of a 7 minute short that Kira did as a student film for Florida State University titled The Dollhouse, and that came out in 2017 and apparently was included on the DVD Blu ray release of Cult of Chucky as a bonus feature. So I, I quite like that that was basically expanded into this, basically doing recaps of the seven films and then talking about these family connections, these interviews that she did with people involved with the films. She didn't interview every person who was interviewed for Doc of Chucky, but there are big players in this. Don Mancini, Fiona Dourif, Brad Dourif, Jennifer Tilly is in there as well. And yeah, I think she's in it. Like I just watched it, so I'm trying to encapsulate everything the best I could. Billy Boyd is in it as well. I don't recall if he was interviewed specifically for Doc of Chucky. I do remember they include at least a bit of footage of him, but I can't remember if he was interviewed specifically for that. But yeah, he got a good amount of screen time in this, probably a couple minutes, few minutes, which, yeah, still prominent though. I'm trying to look up when exactly this was released because I do the release dates for the things I've covered so far. So, Living with Chucky was released on April. Oh wait, it says 2023 here, but could have sworn it's 2022. Okay, so August 13th, 2022, Popcorn Frights Film Festival. So that was the premiere. And then it was at Fright Fest on August 29th that year. And then Fantastic Fest, September 25th. Screamfest LA, October 15th. Toronto After Dark Film Festival, October 23rd. Splat Film Fest Horror Festival, October 30th. And then it had its online premiere April 4th, 2023, and then its Blu ray release April 21st, 2023. So, yeah, and Kira has done a few other things, just scrolling through the credits here real quick. Let's see, a few shorts: The Man in White, Past Presents, Inked, Phoebe. Those were all from 2014 to 2019. Was a segment director on In Search of the Sanderson Sisters. Director of Strange to Me, which is another short that came out 2021. So, yeah, has some things to her credits here, which is cool. So, this documentary is 1 hour, 40 minutes, 45 seconds. it was kind of neat seeing the bloody disgusting logo at the front. It's a website where I tend to see some horror film news once in a while. But as for the how much coverage each film gets, so the first film, much like in Doc of Chucky, gets the most coverage. It gets 19 minutes, 30 seconds. And like I said, some of the big players are there, but they don't have Tom Holland, Chris Sarandon, or Catherine Hicks like they do in Doc of Chucky. Um, I'm just gonna say here that going into this after watching Doc of Chucky, I was kind of worried that it would feel redundant watching this again, but I actually think having watched Doc of Chucky enhanced this rewatch of Living with Chucky for me because there's less screen time for each of these films. But since I had seen Doc of Chucky, I thought to myself, "Oh, this is really short recap," but it's fine because all of that in-depth info is in Doc of Chucky. So I feel like they kind of complement each other in a way. Weirdly, in Doc of Chucky, um, Brad Dourif talks about how he does the different voices of the multiple Chuckies in Cult, and here in Living with Chucky, Jennifer Tilly similarly talks about how she does the different voices for like Tiffany, the Tiffany doll, and Jennifer Tilly, and then when Tiffany Soul is in Jennifer Tilly. So it's kind of funny how that works. There is a little bit of behind the scenes footage now and then. Like, for example, in Doc of Chucky, you'd get things like a little bit of footage of Brad uh, sort of on his knees pretending to be the Chucky doll in rehearsals for the first Child's Play. Here you see a bit of Brad and Jennifer doing the voice acting across from each other. It was cool seeing that they got to play off of each other in that way. Um, and weirdly, a part of this documentary, like toward the end, mentions how voice acting can get kind of lonely because you're in a room, and even though there might be other people, like it can feel lonely as opposed to being in person in these different settings. And yeah, I don't know, it's kind of strange how they touched on that, kind of unexpected. But yeah, Child's Play 1 gets 19 minutes, 30 seconds. You get some of the same anecdotes, but not all of them. Uh, you get Don Mancini's influences mentioned for a bit. Similarly to how in Doc of Chucky, they mentioned certain things are homages to other films. And then at 19 minutes, 30 seconds, is when coverage of Child's Play 2 begins. And whenever they start covering, um, whenever the documentary starts covering a different installment, it does this cute thing where I guess this is Kira who does this, like taking physical, like home video copies of each of the film and inserting them into the thing. There are VHS copies of the original Child's Play trilogy, and then from Bride onward, it's DVDs. So you got a VCR and a DVD player. So yeah, I really like that transition. It's a fun thing. The beginning of this also has a nice sort of drawing looking animation of Chucky characters, like you see his family and stuff. The other documentary had these illustration had different types of illustrations. So I do like how these both include visual art in that manner. Different styles but similar approach. So Child's Play 2 coverage begins at 1930, and then in that segment you get to hear a bit more about Christine Elise's audition. I don't recall it being touched upon as much in the other doc. Um, and then at 25 minutes, so that Child's Play 2 segment is about 5.5 minutes. So then Child's Play 3 coverage is from 25 to 27, so only 2 minutes. So once again, it feels shorter in coverage to me, but it actually is shorter, whereas the other doc, it was like equal to two, but it felt shorter to me for some reason. I'm kind of wondering if the people behind either of these documentaries tried reaching out to Justin Whalen to get his perspective on Child's Play 3, but I don't know. Maybe they tried reaching out and he just didn't feel like it. Like, I don't know. I can't really speak to that. And then from 27 minutes to 35 minutes is Bride of Chucky coverage. So that's 8 minutes right there. And they talk about the transition in tone, and how slasher movies go through like these types of transitions, go into comedy or go in space, and they decided, you know obviously they didn't go into space. Talked about the chemistry between the Tiffany and Chucky characters there. So similar stuff to what we hear in the other doc. And then Seed of Chucky, kind of surprisingly, gets 12 minutes of coverage from 35 minutes to 47 minutes in. And again, you get the sense here that the people involved were proud of that film, but the people, the audience, didn't quite take it as well, and they affirmed that it was due to the comedic elements, and mentioned that people later on really resonated with the queer elements, the transgender factor with Glenda. Later on, people came around on those elements. And then 47 minutes to an hour and 1 minute is Curse of Chucky coverage, so 14 minutes right there. So, yeah, it feels like the amount of coverage is expanding little by little. Uh, Fiona Dourif's journey is, told here as well, but maybe some different details here and there. I do like how she's sitting next to her dad and they sort of play off of each other, and it's really fun and really it gets a bit emotional at a certain point, like when she says I still need you and stuff like that. And then an hour and 1 minute to an hour and 15 minutes in is Cult of Chucky coverage. And yeah, there's I'm struggling to remember if there was anything that was much different about the stuff talked about there. Um, like I've said, some of the same people do get interviewed, but maybe not as many people. Like you don't get Therio, Dr. Foley's actor, for example. I think Malcolm's actor was involved, but I should mention this documentary also interviews other celebrities who feel like, I guess they are also Chucky fans. Like Abigail Breslin is interviewed in this doc, and chimes in a little bit about child acting and stuff like that. They even throw in a little bit of footage of Zombieland Double Tap of all things. Um, and yeah, there were a few other people. I'm struggling to remember like who else was in this. From Insidious. What's her name? Um, let's see, Insidious. But yeah, she was in this too, I think. Lynn Shay, that's who it was. Um, yeah, she plays Elise in the Insidious films. So it was cool that there were these other people who were interviewed for this documentary. And so after the hour 15 mark is where it kind of has this odd pivot into being about family. So you got 25 minutes left, and most of that runtime is about family and then a little bit about fandom. So you got Tony Gardner and Kira Gardner, father, daughter. During the Seed of Chucky coverage, there's mention of, trying to get Tony on board to work with them. And Don at some point talks about how he likes working with some of the same people. So that really informs why he brings back certain characters and why he has actors playing multiple characters, perhaps. And an interesting memory of, Kira's early memory of seeing the Chucky and Tiffany dolls as a kid. And there's a little bit of a melancholic feel, you get a couple people talking about how working in film can be a bit isolating, and it's time away from family, but it's time to help the family. It's a passion that helps with the family, so it kind of does a strange pivot into um, talking about some of the I guess positives and negatives of all that, where in a weird way this franchise does bring people together. And for several minutes it talks about the fandom and how uh, even fans, families that they make, end up um, being really into the franchise, and so it does unite people even people who feel like outsiders. So I think that's also something that horror films kind of draw in, some of those outsiders who kind of feel like they're on the outside or whatever. And during the last 2 minutes, maybe not the full 2 minutes, so maybe like a minute at most, there is mention of the Chucky TV show, Jennifer Tilly talking a little bit about it. So I do like that there is that glimpse of that here. It like I said about Doc of Chucky, it was kind of strange that that didn't mention the TV show. I almost wonder if maybe it's a rights related thing, but I really don't know. Um, Something I thought was kind of funny, I think at the beginning of the Child's Play 2 segment here, is the subtitles said darkly amusing, tinkling children's carnival music. At least that's what the Tubi subtitles say. I don't know if it's different if you watch it on some other service, but yeah, I do like those transitions. And in between things, you see a little bit of doll being built or something. So I do think this documentary gets creative. I like how the interviews are like in natural environments. You see people sitting in chairs outside or inside instead of, in Doc of Chucky, they'll try to put the same background in the back, and maybe it's like against a green screen or something. So I do like that there is that difference here. Um, and here they do talk about CGI versus actual puppets. Both of these docs mention at some point the idea of having a CGI Chucky come about, but the fans, they really want the practical stuff. Um, so yeah, and they acknowledge how kind of twisted it is having um, Nika be Chucky and it's Fiona, it's her dad, and that weird whole thing. But um, yeah, like I'm not, I don't know like what else to mention about this documentary, but all this is to say that I I came into this rewatch thinking that it would feel like more of the same, but I think because I had watched the other documentary, I got a better sense of what makes this one different. It's more focused on the family aspect, which made it feel disjointed on the first watch, but I think on the second watch, I had the family aspect more in the front of my mind as it went through the recaps. And it makes sense that the recaps are short so that this more family focused last portion of the documentary is a bit bigger and not overshadowed by all the recaps. I was actually impressed by how they were able to encapsulate each film within the small amounts of time they had recapping the films and the making of those films. So yeah, I do think Living with Chucky is still worth watching, even if you have seen Doc of Chucky. So you could watch it before or after that doc. Like I think it could work either way. For me, watching it before doc was a little disorienting because of that pivot, but once you know the pivot, I guess it works better. So yeah, I think I'm coming into this one rating it a little higher than I expected. I think when I first watched it, I gave it an 8.0 out of 10, but I'm going to raise it a little bit, give it an 8.5 out of 10. Both of these documentaries are really good. They complement each other Doc of Chucky is the more in-depth one, but it could have gotten a bit more in-depth. Like, like they mention a thing and then don't include more about the thing. Like uh, the female voice they considered for Chucky, that would have been neat if they had like a voice clip they could play. But I don't know if that would be available anywhere. But yeah, just little things like that. But these are both really good documentaries, and I think they're different enough to justify watching both of them. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on living with Chucky. I've probably forgotten some things I may have wanted to mention while that I thought of while I was watching it, but you know how these things go. Sometimes you just have to let it go and just let it sit and let people discover these things for themselves. So that's it finally for this Chucktober and Chucktober epilogues stuff. Thanks for tuning in to all that here on Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. I might have stuff to talk about later in the month, but I'll just have to see what I feel like talking about. Um, I have some ideas, but I got a lot of stuff going on, but we'll see. So thanks for tuning in and see you all soon.